Hey everyone, I'm Harv, Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Welcome back everybody. I am in Greytown today, back in Greytown. I was in Greytown recently interviewing Sian Patterson, and now I'm back in Greytown, different weather, beautiful day. I'm with Sue Johnston in her home, just on the outskirts of Greytown. The sun is shining. It is a beautiful spring day. And Sue, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Pleasure, Harv, I think.
You think? We'll find out. Sue and I go back a wee while, and I'm just going to explain. We were introduced to each other through Jane O'Shea, and Sue has been a facilitator for Collective Intelligence for how long, Sue?
I'd say it would be about 7 years, Harv. Does that sound right?
No, it's longer than that.
Oh.
Anyway, let's go.
A long time.
A long time, 9 or 10 years, I think. And I'm stoked to be here interviewing Sue because she's really interesting and she knows stuff and has had a huge influence on my development, which I'm really appreciative of. And Sue is a sportswoman, mother, wife, communicator, facilitator, and what's the term with the Bréne Brown work, Sue? You're a certified...
I'm a certified Daring Way facilitator and a certified Dare to Lead facilitator.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So the classic is when I was planning for this podcast and talking to Karen in the office, she went, Sue's got so much to talk about, it might be 2 podcasts, and it might be 2 podcasts in time. But I'm really excited to be here, Sue. So, yeah, thank you. Okay, so where should we start? Let's start with where we met. So what was the intrigue about coming to facilitate with Collective Intelligence?
Well, I think intrigue is probably a strong word, Harv. In the beginning, if you recall, I came along to a group with a group of facilitators to observe and just to see what Collective Intelligence was about. And I was curious, about what you were doing and how you were doing it. And as a result of that, you then gave me the opportunity to come and observe you facilitating a group so I could actually see what it was about. And what was going through my head at that time is a bit of a typical message for me, which is, would I be able to do this? Am I good enough to be able to do this work? And I suspect that's not what you saw.
No. And look, the backstory to this, I asked Sue to come along and observe, and she did. She came along and observed and sat there and watched. I'm thinking, what's she doing? But it was, and you and I are so different in so many ways, and yet we also believe in the same things, which is interesting, coming up from totally different aspects. And that's why I love working with you, Sue, because I often think if Sue's happy, everybody's happy, because you like things to be done really well, and you've got a really high level of professionalism, and yeah, you're one of those people I go, so how does Sue feel about this? Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, Harv, I have to say, we connect on around a number of different things. Dance, you like a good boogie on the dance floor.
I've got to say, you're possibly a better dancer than me. Anyway.
Thanks, Harv. We connect around humour, some of our a little bit crazy humour that we somehow find, that we both find funny. And we also connect around our love for New Zealand and what we believe is the potential of people and businesses in New Zealand. So I'd say, what's fabulous with our work is, yes, we are probably embodiment of collective intelligence, bringing together diverse people who normally would not come together. And yet we find there are so many different levels that we connect on.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You introduced me to Sir Paul Callaghan's work, and I was aware of him, but you introduced me to a number of his videos, and that was like a big light coming out. It gave validation to stuff that was just rumbling around in the back of my head, and it was very, very cool. And then seeing you introduce people to that work and seeing people go, "Oh my God!" It was just So we can get onto that as well. So why? How would you describe yourself?
Thoughtful, reflective, enthusiastic, and I suppose I was reminded the other day by the lovely Nick Coop when I was with her. I was admiring and saying to her, with the work that she does, she's just put together this amazing facility, and she's created out of seeing basically an empty lot with an old house in it. And I said, I'm just so fascinated about how you see the potential in these spaces, because I don't see that. And she just looked at me and said, yeah, but you see potential in people.
Right.
And I said, yeah, actually, that's a thing for me.
Potential in people. And then what do you do with that potential?
Well, it's not what I do, it's what I hopefully help, support, equip people to do. So they realise that potential.
That's such a Sue Johnston answer. It's just
nothing but authentic, Harvey.
I love it. I love it. It's just you. The thing with you, so I can never bullshit you. It's interesting. The pushback is very gentle, but it's always there. Yeah, it's very cool. So, and just for people listening to this, Sue facilitated my collective intelligence team for about 7 years. That's why, and that was wonderful to have you through that. You facilitated 2 host days that I hosted, both of them quite different, and the first one was particularly challenging. And having your guidance and steady hand there was fabulous. And I think the amount of care that you put into design is quite something that you are really, your preparation is second to none in those days. So where do you want to begin this conversation? What's the area? Shall we start as to what brought you into this space of facilitation and coaching? What drew you to this space?
I would say it was never a conscious thing for me to end up here. And if I look back at quite a lot I've done in my life, it's circumstance and relationships and connections that sort of something emerges. I would love to be able to say, I set myself this particular thing and I'm on this, but that really hasn't been how life has been for me. So I ended up with a skill set which started being developed when I was a nurse. So I was a registered nurse. And if I look back, I can see the threads that still come through today. Mm-hmm. And one of those threads is around, seeing the potential in people and supporting them to be better. So my work as a nurse, I did clinical work both in mental health and in general, mainly orthopaedic area. And the development of me as a person happened through my nursing. So I don't know of another profession really where you can see someone take their first breath and sit with them when they're taking their last. And so the privilege of nursing for me was always that. And then as a mental health nurse, where it could have easily have been nursing is about doing a series of tasks, it can't be in mental health. It's about seeing the person. And it was in that experience that I really got to see that I was the therapeutic tool, not a thing that I was doing to someone. And I think that thread's continued on through my life. And my experience as a nurse then led to me going into the Ministry of Health as a nurse advisor at quite a young age, actually, at a time when the whole world in health was changing because it was the early 80s. We were going through quite a lot of reform. Most of my colleagues had been matrons or heads of, and I was 25, so I was new and inexperienced. So that was, suddenly I was in this bigger picture system, not with someone working with one person.
So how do you jump from that to that?
I struggled for a bit because I never actually chose to leave clinical practice. It just so happened I got back from overseas and there was this contract going and I didn't really want to go back to night shift. I had no money. So I ended up in the Ministry of Health at a time when Helen Clark had just become Minister of Health. She had and I was given the job of reviewing the Nurses Act. And she came in and she wanted to amend the Nurses Act so that midwives could have the autonomy to practice without being under the supervision of a doctor. So suddenly my world became around this legislation and changing it, and within 9 months it was changed. And I don't know, it was just a different relationship with nursing and nurses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And midwives, obviously.
And you got to work with Helen Clark.
Well, I got to, sit alongside a team that worked with her. Yes, yeah, an amazing woman.
And what impact did that have on you as a person going through that process?
I think seeing the bigger picture. I think I was spoilt in seeing a piece of legislation go through in 9 months, and in my years after that, I never saw a piece of legislation move that fast. So I think I was a little bit spoilt seeing that whole process with a very competent minister who knew exactly what she wanted.
Right.
And then after that, the currency of being a registered health professional working in the ministry was not high, because those were the days of economists who believed that if you had worked in the system, you were captured. So your influence on health policy was somewhat different than what it had been, in my experience.
Right. Capture, that sounds spooky.
Yeah, it was a fascinating time of, the Crown Health enterprises and competition and
yeah. I won't go down that rabbit hole because I don't think we'll get out of that.
No.
But it sounds intriguing. Sounds intriguing. So from there, what was the journey after that period through there?
I went into more general policy analysis type work, and I moved to ACC, and they had just developed a policy unit, and I really loved working for ACC because coming from health, where you have to be everything to everyone, and you actually can't be, but you have to try to be, the boundaries aren't so clear. But in ACC, the boundaries are really clear. We are here to help people who have been injured to get them back to work and get them back to living. Mm-hmm. And you're in the scheme or you're not in the scheme, and here's what happens when you're in the scheme.
And you know what the target is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, and also my connection with the ACC scheme, of course, was through my health area, but it's so much bigger than that, and it took a while to get a feel for the whole ACC scheme and everything that happens in it, working with quite different people, finance people and insurer type people and
all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you, that's all in the public sector, and now you're out by yourself. How do you transition out of public into working for yourself?
I had a bit of an entrepreneurial dream, which started when I was back working in the Ministry of Health, which I did after ACC. And I had 3 young children, and the ministry had been restructured, and I had the opportunity to leave, and I did. And I went to trying to do this entrepreneurial thing and still doing work for the public sector, but as a contractor. So, and I did that for about 4 or 5 years, that focus. And I was trying to do quite a lot, but I put my heart and soul into my new venture, which was, in today's world, would be TripAdvisor for families. But it was like the internet had just started. The tourism sector didn't know me. I was by myself. I had a good advisory team. My business model wasn't quite right. And man, I flogged that for a while, and I spent a lot of money and time on it, but it didn't go anywhere. And I look back, and I think one of the things was it was too early.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was my own competency to do that.
The most important thing with any startup, 80% of it's timing.
Mm.
You know, you can have all the money in the world, you can have all the right people, you have a great idea, but if it's too soon, or the time's not right, that's the most critical thing with any startup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have another...
So a nice fail there.
A nice fail there, and probably a nice segue to talk about the next fail.
Okay. This podcast is entitled Susan Johnston Failing Boldly or something. Steadily.
Like learning slowly or something, I don't know. So about the time that bird flu was out and about, and they started talking about people needing to wear masks. So here we are a few years ago now.
Masks will never take off.
And I thought, I know what it's like to wear a mask. It's not very nice. They're uncomfortable, they're hard to wear, and it's hard to wear them properly. I wonder if there is a product out there that's a bit more comfortable and interesting to wear, that people, I saw, interesting to wear, right? And I found this company which was just past startup. It was NASDAQ listed in the US, and they had a product called the Nano Mask. So any of my old mates listening to this will be rolling their eyes because they were all bought Nano Masks, which I hope they're using now. Anyway, so the Nano Mask had a shell that you just put in water. It was made out of sort of a hard plastic, but you replaced the filters. And the filters were as good as N95s, if not better. And they had nanoparticles on the outside that detracted viruses, so that, repel viruses. I thought, this is good. I'm into a bit of research, a bit of that. Long story short, I became the New Zealand Pacific distributor.
Mm-hmm.
I had to hand over quite a bit of money to do that and get in the stock. And I was a bit late, so all the government agencies had already bought all their mask stocks. So I had thought, government will love this, da-da-da. No. So my market was individuals, a few vet clinics, something else. So I had all this stock. And then the company back in the States decided to change their product. And they went and moved totally to a new product. They don't exist now, the company. And so I lost a lot of money.
So you've got a garage full of old stock that now has been superseded by new nano stock.
No, well, this is the funny thing, Harv. I had to get rid of all the stock. They made me dump it. I've got about 20, And there is nothing on the market at the moment that is as good as that was, ironically, although I've read of an Israeli company that seems to have a similar IP.
Right. Once again, timing.
So there I am. So my family do laugh at me. They're like, TripAdvisor for families, these blooming nano masks. And here we are. And now, yeah, that's the way it is.
So what impact did that have on you internally? So because failure is a fascinating thing.
Well, particularly the second one, because of the amount of money it cost. I was a single mum at that stage. I had quite a lot of shame around that, because that money could have been used for my kids' education, university education. So and being a second one, it's like, I thought I'd done my due diligence. What went on? So yeah, I had quite a bit of shame around that, and also the part of me that wanted to contribute to New Zealand's wealth, but again had been stifled. And so we're sort of getting to the point of your original question with me now, is why do you do what you do now? And I thought, what do I have? What are my strengths that I can do to support New Zealanders, people I work with, people I support, to be working towards having high value, skilled products, services, etc. And I thought, well, I've got all that I have is around my growing potential in people. And my work was slowly transitioning away from doing straight public policy into facilitating change and doing stuff with people having to make operational changes, which actually has always been a thing. I've always wondered how come we know this stuff over here and yet we don't do it.
What's the stuff?
So if I think about in health practitioners, new research comes out that says this is the protocol now for how we treat certain illnesses or how we do things. And yet we continue to have practice going on over here that isn't that. And it continues that way. And so I've always been interested in the gap between knowing something and doing something. And that is the central thing around my work now is, yes, supporting people to know stuff, and then let's do the harder work, which is doing it.
Yeah, so Jane O'Shea would have called that the technical change, which is here is the plan, and the adaptive change, what gets in the way. And you're talking about the adaptive change.
Yeah.
What gets in the way of taking a plan, which is a really good plan, makes sense, why aren't we using it? Yeah?
What stops us?
And that is just an endless, complex thing.
And yet not, because we're human. And we should expect that there are within us this ability to do and not do.
Yeah. So how do you become a facilitator?
I don't think there's one path to becoming a facilitator. I think there are general attributes that a facilitator grows over time or has, and I think, curiosity.
What does curiosity mean to you?
Curiosity means that I lead with curiosity, which means I am interested to know what is going on for you. I'm interested to know why things are showing up in a certain way for you. So instead of me being the teacher or the guru or whatever.
The holder of knowledge.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it's look, I've watched you facilitate much more than anybody else because you facilitated me for such a long time. And I mean, two things that stand out with your facilitation is that seldom do I know what you're thinking or what your opinion is. And you play the most extraordinary long game. And I've seen you do that often, where it would be literally 2 or 3 years later, you'd pull something up that happened 2 or 3 years ago, and you'd pull it back up again and go, connect the dots between the two. And I've never seen anybody with that ability to pull stuff up. And it's just like, she remembers that, and we're using it again now. And are those connected? Yeah, it's a fascinating skill. Do you know you're even doing that? Is that conscious?
No, not really. What's conscious is that I'm on the journey with this person or these people, and I have a memory from back here that might contribute to some more awareness there. And the same in my coaching practice as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was always very, very gentle, very considered, safe. And the thing that I learnt is it was up to the people to do the work. And I've also seen you frustrated when people wouldn't do the work. And right now, that smile on your face is just like, yeah. Giving them the opportunity, but they don't take it. It can be pretty frustrating.
And that smile on my face is also because I recognise that in me, of course. The things that frustrate us usually, there's an element of that is because of something in us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your greatest joy facilitating? What really makes you glow?
So with facilitation, it's slightly different from coaching, because in facilitation there's a group dynamic. So the joy comes for me when there is a connection or a new sense that happens with the group. Yes, one person may have the insight and the something that they're doing that's really courageous. The fact that the rest of the team around them have helped create that happen has huge joy for me, because that's life, really. We can't do all this alone. I mean, I'm now referring back to one of Brene's physics of vulnerability. It's our work to do, but we were never meant to do it alone. And that's what I love seeing, particularly in a collective intelligence group, where people have come from such diverse backgrounds, would never normally come across each other, and yet the wisdom in the room is making new magic happen.
Yeah, it's cool, eh?
Mm-hmm.
The unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. You just go, wow, look at that. Those two would have never had that conversation. And then you see new thoughts and whatever coming from two people that are vastly different. Yeah, it's quite special. So you mentioned Bréne there. What should we move on to that, Sue? What drew you to her work?
I read her book, one of her books called Daring Greatly, around 7 years ago. Everything seems to be 7 years today, Harv. Obviously my brain can't think back further than that. And when I read it, I thought, oh my goodness, she's writing about my family.
Ah.
The stuff around shame and not enoughness really connected me with my world as a young girl and a woman growing up. And so I went out and bought 3 copies for my sisters and my mum to gift for Christmas, which of course they looked rather bewildered. Oh, thank you. But that work stayed with me personally.
Did they read them?
Sort of. Funny story about my younger sister. She's an international netball umpire. Hello, Anne Hay. And she came to a Dare to Lead in Sport that I ran with Katie when Katie came over from the US. And we had a book table, and on the table was Daring Greatly. And she said, this book looks familiar. I said, well, it should. It's in your house. And she suddenly connected it. She said, oh, yes. Perhaps I haven't read it.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So Brene's work then came part of my professional world around the time when I'd been working about 15 years independently, and I felt like I needed to be fed. I needed some professional development stuff.
Some juice.
Yes, and Bréne happened to be doing a certification in Sydney. So I applied to go and do it over there, and, got in and did the work and loved it. I love it. Still love that work. I love it because, it's based on really sound research. I love it because the way that Bréne and her research team have managed to put it together into curricula for the likes of me to use is very powerful, and her beautiful use of story and metaphor people connect with. So when you talk to people about their arena and what happens for them when they've got their hand on the arena door, the places we can go together to explore that and uncover things is really powerful.
And so on my terms, so when you introduced me to her work, was that I found it practical. I could use it. So I don't get off on theory on any basis. I was like that when I was a farmer. If I couldn't envisage how I'd use it, I just switched off. And that's a strength and a weakness in me, because I just go, oh, yeah, like, how do I use it? And it's just like, I just lose interest. But Brene's work, I went, oh, I can use that. I can see that. So let's just, you made the comment about when you read the book, it reminded you of your of your family and shame and not enoughness.
Not enoughness.
Not enoughness.
Yeah.
So how did that impact your development growing up?
What it meant for me growing up, and I obviously didn't know it at the time, but I can see it now, was that I didn't put myself out very far beyond. If I did, it was with a team or it was with someone that said, come on, let's try something. This was in my sport area and lots of places. I am a recovering perfectionist, so things had to be perfect, and if they weren't perfect, and of course nothing ever is perfect, then it wasn't enough.
Right.
So I went through life with not enough, and probably one of the most significant things that happened was when I was in the New Zealand women's water polo team.
So I'm pleased you mentioned that, Sue, because you talk about sport, but we actually did quite well in sport.
Yes, I represented 3 sports at provincial level, and that was age grade netball, surf lifesaving, and water polo, which was the New Zealand team thing. So my not enoughness showed up right from the start when I got into the team, in that I'm a left-hander, and there weren't many left-handed players, and I thought I got in the team because I'm left-handed. So I can play down that side of the pool. That's why I got him, straight away. I was 20 when I got into the team.
Is that young?
No, that's not young compared to, because here we go into comparison. So my mate that I grew up with, hello Anne Fowler, represented New Zealand in 4 sports, and at the age of 14 she made the New Zealand women's team. And so, a bit of comparison there. Never goes amiss. So.
But she was right-handed, so, that's...
Yes, and a absolutely, ultra-talented athlete. So there's that. I get into the team. It's also the first year that I am working as a nurse, and I'm doing shift work, which means I can't train when all the other girls in the team are training. I have a thing from the coach where I'm doing my own training, and I'm going, I'm probably not training hard. I'm not training hard enough because I'm doing this by myself. Occasionally, one of the guys who was a cop in the New Zealand men's team and I used to train together. But for me, there was still a not enoughness. So when we had the trials for the next year, the first thing we did was a 400-metre time trial, and I did really badly in that time trial. I came last. My time was the slowest. I did really well. The rest of the drills, the rest of the things, my leg work, my strength, etc., was good. My ball placement, all that was good. But in my head, because of that time trial result, do you know what I did have?
We're about to find out.
I went to the selectors that night and I made myself unavailable.
You dick. Oh,
and
man.
They said, why? And I said, oh, well, I'm getting married next year. I'm not sure about the money, da-da-da-da-da. So the team was announced the next day at the end of the trials, and I was first non-travelling reserve. And after I did that, I said to myself, I'm never going to do that again. And it's been a story that I've told my kids as well. I think probably now you're seeing the pattern between Brene's work and my experience. And it's a constant practice and a constant thing through life that I've had to go, well, why are you really not wanting to show up here? Didn't know that story, Hal.
I didn't know that story. I'm still recovering from it. You're too far away for me to kick you. And yet I get it. I get it. And so, if that situation happened again, what would you do? You're the slowest time trial. What would you do?
With the how I'm equipped now?
Yep.
Well, a huge part of what I've learnt with Brene's work is self-compassion. It's something I knew nothing about at all, and Kristen Neff's works as well. And so I would be taking a deep breath and giving myself a bit of compassion around that, and tell myself that I've just done the best I can, and let's just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big difference in the outcome, eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
That self-compassion is a fascinating thing. I played representative tennis, so if I was the underdog, I was great. I was fearless as the underdog. If I was the favourite, I would tighten up, and I would limit. I would think of all the things that go wrong, or what have I lost, and just this stuff in my head was just this monster. And so what would happen? Every now and then I might win as the underdog, and often I would lose as the favourite. It was fascinating, and it was just mental. I could, practicing I was fine, but put me in this thing, and I would destroy myself. The mental game inside my head was phenomenal, and nobody could see it. And it was very hard to. And back then there weren't the skills for somebody to actually help you and go, okay, we need to work with us, because technically you're fine, but we need to sort this thing out inside your head.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what we see today in sports, which is why I love doing this work in the sports space.
So you have, and I've had the great fortune of being trained by you, and I've been to. You ran a workshop a while ago, the Daring Goddess workshop, which you wouldn't invite me to, which I was very annoyed that I couldn't go to it. I'd love to be a goddess, but anyway, apparently it was only for women, which was. I'm getting over, so I'm getting over.
See that. Yeah.
So you are you still running the short courses with Brene's work?
Yes. In fact, Mary Beth and I have one coming up in organisation one.
So this is Mary Beth Robles, who is also trained?
Yes.
Or certified?
Yes.
Yep.
She's also, certified facilitator.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And so tell me about these short courses. How do they work?
Well, it depends on the focus and on the team, and I know that you've experienced our Resilient Leaders
the
workshop.
One you let me into.
Yeah. Yes, that one, which was based on Brene's Rising Strong work. And so the way that Mary Beth and I like to do this work is to put people in a place which is, and I'm thinking about a physical space where it's easier to do the work. So it's away from their normal environment, and they're well looked after, and they're fed well, and they have nice places to sleep and do their journaling, etc. Because we recognise how hard the work can be, and that they need that time. And then we allow the people to do the work in the way that works for them. I think you might have experienced a little bit of that with the Rising Strong, Resilient Leaders work. Yeah.
So one of the things that comes to mind with the one of the practical things I learnt was the living beak. Is that how it's?
Oh, you learnt about boundaries, integrity, and generosity.
Yeah. And that was one of the most, and I've used it half a dozen times when I've been in a hole. So just take us through the boundaries. Just explain those three.
So you're referring to one of the areas in the Rising Strong program, which is when we look at living with boundaries, integrity, and generosity. So the generosity is about everyone's doing the best they can. So having that view, everyone's doing the best they can, and saying, well, we can say that only if we have boundaries, because everyone can be doing the best they can, but there's still this what's okay and what's not okay. And sandwiched between the two is the integrity, which is the courage to speak up and say what needs to be said to maintain that boundary and generosity.
Sounds easy. I remember when you took me through the framework, and the interesting thing for me was the difficulty thing was being generous to myself, of that I'm doing the best I can. It's like, yeah, right, because, I'm such a critic of myself, and that was, of that program, that was the most difficult thing for me to work through, because I'm not sure I even wanted to believe that, because if it gave me an out or something, it was just, and I've got to say that, and we haven't got time to go into the detail, but I had a meltdown over something and woke up the next morning, and I had, through the night, I had got up and I'd written down, and Kate and I were actually travelling together on a plane, and as we went to sleep, I was in the most foul mode, and I'm a wonderful sulker, and I can sulk for days, and we were going on holiday, and Kate's thinking, oh God, this is, I've got to bloody travel with this, and I woke up the next morning, and she said, looked at me and said, good morning, how are you? And I went, I'm good, and with a big smile on face, and she went, boom, Sue Johnston and Brene's work, because she'd known that I had a template to work through, and to basically clear the system out. And the hardest thing of that, I wrote down the boundaries, I wrote down the integrity of, what I actually needed to do, and then the last one of the generosity was, I'm doing the best I can. That was the most difficult thing, I could do the first two, and then going, I'm doing the best I can. Am I? Is that right? Is this as good as you can do? Yeah. And then when I got over that, and it took about 40 minutes to get through that, and just cleared the system out. And I, had a fabulous holiday, and I wasn't as big an ass as I would have been. But it just gave me that. Yeah, it was phenomenal. And that's the practicality of Bréne's work that I love.
And I know that you're a particular fan of the SFD.
Yes.
The shitty first draft.
Yes. Yeah, because my shitty first drafts are, because I had to get that down first, and I've got to say my shitty first drafts are magnificent. It's just, and you see them all over the place when people actually bring their shitty first draft out in the open and speak them and go, oh, yeah. So just talk us through what the shitty first draft is, so we're not talking in lingo. So,
well, I might do a little bit of a move here and say, Harv, what is the shitty first draft for you?
Oh, the shitty first draft for me is the thing that when I get triggered, when I get upset, and it can be a whole multiple things, is the thing that goes off inside my head. And it's real, and it's justified, and it makes all sorts of people wrong. Me, you, whatever, and it is phenomenally powerful. And that's the thing, I can hold on to that shitty first draft really, really well, and I can build a magnificent story around that shitty first draft. And you could write films. You could have films on my shitty first draft. It's just, and it seems to be, none of it's particularly positive. Yeah, that's my shitty first draft.
Yeah.
And when I write them down now, because with this practice and get them down, when I look back at them 2 or 3 days later, I went, oh my God, I actually thought that was true.
And imagine if you had just, boom, raced off and...
Yep, and acted on it.
Yeah.
And I've done that in my life plenty of times.
Of course, we do.
Right.
And occasionally they still do.
Yep. Yep. But the wonderful thing with that work, so is it gives you time. It gives you a tool to actually stop the normal pattern. And that's why I'm really excited about this whole work of yours and whatever, is that we can actually reprogram ourselves. And that's really exciting to think that, okay, so I don't the shit that I've been using for the last 30 years, I actually have got a choice. I don't have to carry on using that, which is really quite exciting.
Yeah, you're reminding me, Susan David is a psychologist at Harvard, but she has some wonderful LinkedIn posts, and she had one not long ago, and it just said, emotions are data, not directives.
Emotions are data, not directives.
Which is basically what you're doing with the shitty first draft, is you are looking, your emotion is coming out on that paper and how it's showing up. And that becomes data that you look at and go, what's really going on here for me? Oh, actually, I'm really upset about something over here, but that's triggered me here. Or I'm believing this and I don't actually know that that's true. That's data.
Yeah. And then you mix that up with social media, and you see some of the stuff that gets put down on social media, and it's really harmful. Really harmful. And then people respond to that.
Yeah.
And the whole cycle just, it exacerbates. So what's can we move slightly back to the Paul Callaghan work, because it sort of ties in together with, this people developing and becoming, I don't know, a bit clunky, but better versions of themselves. So what was the thing that attracted you to Sir Paul's work? What was that?
A bit like you have, I had all these things in my head, which I couldn't really explain, and he managed to do that by saying, we've got all this talent in our country, we need to be, we're only small, we need to be developing in industries and business, etc., that have a high value, so that we can make enough money to provide health and education and all the other services that we used to be able to afford, but we can't so much now. And so I was like, yes, high wage economy connects, the dots I connect with that means that we can afford to have the health and education and social system.
Housing.
Housing,
all that stuff.
Yeah, got more chance of doing that. Yeah.
So it's the economic return that we get from the high value stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Rod Oram, his work, brilliant in the way that he can communicate that. See, I'm having trouble communicating it now. I just know in me that's where I know the country is capable of being, and I wish we connected the dots more.
So let's reflect back on, I remember, hopefully you do too, I think you might do, but when you showed that video to Ren Apatu, and who was a very successful farmer, and unfortunately was killed in a helicopter crash a couple of years ago, but when you showed Sir Paul's work to Ren, he'd never heard of it, and just the sheer excitement that he got from seeing that explained as data and the different economic models that are out there, and the returns that can be had and what impact they can have. It was phenomenal just to see the energy exuded from Ren from that. And Sir Paul, tragic that he died so early, because his call to action was quite profound, and that we can do better. And the other thing I loved about Sir Paul's work was that he talked about the randomness, that stuff happens quite randomly. We need to set up things but not predict stuff, which goes back to the teams that that often it's the random things that come from left field that we don't expect is where the gold lies. So going forward, where are you going to channel your energy going forward in your training?
In my training, in my work?
Yeah.
Yeah. I I talked about my 2 failed ventures that happened too early. There was another thing that I had developed around that time, about 20 years ago. So my family joke that it's probably time for it now. It's probably the right time. And that, I want to put my energy into that. And that is the Life Star. It's called the Life Star. And I developed it after working in the Ministry of Health and doing the meet and greet with the international people that came to visit New Zealand around, this is our health sector, and this is what we die of, and this is what makes us, unwell, etc. And like the rest of the world, we die from things that are preventable. The top 5 things we die from are preventable, and they are all connected with our lifestyle choices.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much information. If you and I say, we feel overwhelmed and we want to get well, there's so much information out there. So I developed a lifestyle which covers 5 points on the star that if we work to keep in balance in a way that works for us, that will keep us well. So
Okay.
The 5 points are move. It doesn't actually matter how you move, where you move. Just move as good as you can. Stop, which is, doing some mindfulness or just taking some time out, resting, recovering. Move, stop. Care is the next one, and that's about self-care. What we eat, our self-talk, how we actually look after ourselves. Connect, which is our connection with people, the environment. And then the final one is achieve, which is having a goal, having a sense of completing or doing something. And so together with what we know about keeping ourselves well physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, spiritually, they are covered in those 5 areas. And so the star can be used as a scan. So people can, in fact, it is being used in a cancer rehab program set up by Pink and Steel. Lou James, thank you. At the moment, where people can scan and say, now, how am I on each of those points of the star? And classic is that people may be at a 5, like right at the tippy point and saying, yeah, I'm doing really well and move, but I'm not stopping. The whole point of the star is to seek a balance. So if your star is only 2 and it's balanced, that's good. Yes, try and stretch or whatever, but
it's balance.
It's about balance.
So the key with the star is not where you are, but it's to get that balance.
Yeah, and so you can use that as a scan and reflect on that, and then you can use it to plan what it is you'll do to stretch out and maybe, try a bit more of.
Mm.
So the classic in my star at the moment, because I've been travelling, is that I haven't moved as much as I would like to. I haven't been moving as much. So that's I'm aware of that. And then once you have that and you can plan, then it's the do. So here we are, back to my know something, do something. The actual doing, that's the hard part. So then in my work, it's about working with habits and changing habits, etc.
So why is it the wrong time to develop this?
Well, my own collective intelligence group has been sick of me sitting on the Life Star and have said, get on with it. And so here I am. And it's so my first thing is their action is that I have to write a blog post, which I'm sort of doing.
Okay, it's the first live today. That's good.
No, I have started it, no
Yeah.
lie there. And I'm using it with clients more. And I'm writing a little ebook around how to use it as a scan for people. And it's funny because here I am in my own no-do struggle. So, this is why I am not the expert sitting with someone. I am the practitioner who, in their own world, Yeah. So there it is.
Okay, so now we're getting nice and real. So what's getting in the way? What's getting in the way? Is it the third fail?
Oh, thanks for reminding me of that.
I'm a motivational speaker now.
Yeah.
No, what is it? What's getting in the way? Because this makes perfect sense to me.
I know it does. It's to do... what's getting in the way now is different to what was getting in the way in the past.
Yep.
You know, you move through things. What's getting in the way now, I think, I know, is me, the vulnerability of me putting this out in a way that is most useful to people. Like, there is part of me that goes, this is so simple, you know, what's the deal here, you know? So, yeah, so part of it
is there a little bit of the perfectionist coming back in?
I'm sure the perfectionist is partly there in terms of the not enough. You haven't, less, I think, because 20 years is a long time to have it, so...
You think?
So not so much the perfectionist in that front. Maybe my other saboteurs. You know, there's a strong judge there about whether this really is, you know,
What?
going to be useful.
Oh, God.
I know. It sounds, yeah. So this is, you know, you're on the edge of my courage here in terms of me doing this. And I, from a very logical and practical point of view, can see, well, there's no harm in doing it, you know. Let's just put it out there. So it will happen, Harv.
Cool. No, I'm not.
It is happening. It is happening.
I was going to say, I'm not supposed to be here to be nasty to you, so I better not be nasty to you. But, you know, the thing I love about that, Sue, is that, so last week I had a week off, right? And last week I did lots of movement, and I was planting trees and lots of movement. And I did stop because we've got the regenerative a conversion at home, and so I'd spent time stopping and looking at the soil and looking at the plants and stuff like that, and that was fabulous. And there was self-care was pretty good. I played 3 games of golf last week and spent time doing that. It was good. And my goal was to plant 80 trees for the week, and I got the goal and put some fences up, and I did that. But I didn't connect with anybody. And I felt it at the end of the week. I was by myself, and it catches me out that at work I spend lots of time connecting with people. I love connecting with people, but I hadn't connected with anybody. And I got to the end of the week, and I was actually a bit fucked off about that. So that one piece of the spoke, for me, was out of balance. Right? And so when I look at that, I go, that makes sense. That makes sense. I got 4 out of the 5, pretty good. But that one out of balance had an impact that I feel as though the star wasn't glowing nearly as brightly as it could have been.
Yeah.
And once again, going back to the practical thing, I go, there's only 5 parts of the spoke, and I look at it and go, yeah, I understand that. I can remember that. All right, so that's it's simple, going back to the Paul Callahan and the communication stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the doable action from this, Sue, what
Has this become a coaching
Yeah,
session?
no, it hasn't. It's become shame, bullying, peer pressure, shame you on the podcast. What are you going to do with it? Come on.
I do want people to have it and use it. So I will be putting it out there in terms of a ebook for scanning. There are other things that, there are so many different ways I could use this. So I could be doing training with coaches to use with their clients. And I could be using it in a whole lot of different sort of programs like the cancer rehab program, etc., so people can use it. So in a way, it's sort of a bit of symbolism in my own life where I start somewhere and I end up over here, or things just morph into new areas. But I can tell you for sure that things are moving, albeit a little bit slow at the moment, but they are moving, and I am moving through my thinking, doing into being, actually.
Yeah,
being.
good.
Yeah.
So, because the thing is, so if I look at this and I go, if we integrated this into collective intelligence, right, if we had this in the updates, for instance, right, that would be such a simple checklist, right, of going, so how are we doing on that, right?
Yeah.
Because when you put that in there, that crystallised for me while my week off last week was not as much fun, rewarding, something.
Restorative, maybe?
Restorative, there you go. As it could have been, because I hadn't put the focus and I hadn't put enough planning, because I could have done it, right? Everything else I'd sort of planned, but I hadn't planned that bit. So, and if I had, it would have been more restorative for me. There you go. Mm-hmm. So, and so I look at that and go, yeah, we in the updates, it would be a great place to put it.
There you go.
There you go.
Because what you do is you plot your own star and you get to see how it looks and how imbalanced it is, because that's symbolic of how balanced you are.
Yeah. Interesting. So to wrap up, what else would you like to finish on? Is there anything there that we've... Look, there's a whole lot of things we could cover that we haven't. And as Karen said in the office, this is 2 podcasts, and I'd love to come back because we've had to confine it, and we were very disciplined at the beginning, getting some framework so we didn't meander too much. What would be the final thoughts that you'd want to leave the listeners with, signing off from this?
My final thought would be, well, partly I think I'm going to use talk to you, is to be who you are, be authentically you, and know that every one of us has our own struggle and our own courage, and find the support you need to be courageous in the same way as I'm trying to do with the Lifestar, Harv's doing with collective intelligence, and do it your way, but you don't have to do it alone.
Get the support, but do it in your way. Yeah, nice.
And I mean, and do it in your way.
Yeah, no, I've got that.
Yeah.
Got that.
Like, read as many books as you want, and then...
do it in your way. Yeah. Yeah, because so the thing that resonates with the Lifestar, so as I look at that and go, those are all stuff that are dear to you. Right? So this is, I look at that and I go, yep, I can see that as why you have developed that. Yeah.
My number one value is wellbeing. Mine, yours, the people I work with, my whānau, actually, everyone.
Yeah.
And this is my contribution to wellbeing.
And to feed your value.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, so before we sign off, I'd just like to thank your impact you've had on me and your opening up to, we haven't even touched on values, but introducing me to values. When I say, I knew they existed, but actually get clear on values and, naming it at the end there of wellbeing, introducing me to the world of Bréne and making it usable and practical and, your facilitation skills, and you've been a huge influence of me, and I know my life is a lot better off because of that. So thank you for that, and continue being who you are.
Thank you, Harv, and right back at you. I could say a whole heap back to you with your kindness and compassion that you've shown me over the years, and the opportunity you've given me to work in collective intelligence and see the magic that happens. So thank you.
Should we sign off there?
Yeah.
So thank you, and good luck with the lifestyle. I'm really looking forward to seeing that come to life.
Yes, well, full accountability, eh? I have to do it now.
You've just been listening to an episode of Stuff That Matters Now, brought to you by Collective Intelligence. I hope you enjoyed listening to the fun stuff, the rugged stuff, and the complete stuff-ups that have helped this particular Collective Intelligence member evolve while making the world a better place. Do check out our Stuff That Matters Now podcast series on your favourite podcast provider, or visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz to get links to new episodes. Contact us if you want to learn more about how we can help you evolve yourself and others. Thanks for listening.